Good afternoon and welcome to a special edition of Webinar Wednesday. Today we are joined by our host, MD Publishing founder and president, John Krieg, and our panel of top industry professionals. First of all, we've got Letitia Reynolds, Clinical Engineering Operations Manager at UC Health Parkview Medical Center. Then Nadia El-Kassi, Biomedical Engineer, Healthcare Technology Management at VA Central Office. Followed by Carol Davis-Smith, Program Director, UConn BME, Clinical Engineering Internship Program, and President of Carol Davis-Smith and Associates. Our first of our male panelists is Thomas Wang, General Manager of USOC Medical, Douglas Wedwine, Regional Director of Biomedical Engineering at Piedmont Healthcare, and last but not least, Duane James, Senior Director, Clinical Engineering and Medical Equipment Processing at Kaleida Health. Now, before we begin, just a reminder about our Spring MD Expo, which we held at the Pechanga Resort Casino in Temecula, California from April the 15th to the 17th. So please join us for 3 days of education, networking, and the latest advances in medical technology products and services. For more information and registration details, please visit mdexposhow.com. Here at TechNation, we have a milestone to celebrate this year as we turn 15, and who better to celebrate than with our readers? TechNation invites readers old and new to help celebrate its anniversary with 15 prizes and a monthly time capsule in the magazine. So for more information and your chance to win, please visit onetechnation.com/contest. Okay, today's webinar is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll be wrapping up today's discussion with any questions, so please submit your question anytime using the questions feature on the webinar dashboard. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, John.
Thank you so much, Linda. It is a real honor and privilege to be here today. We're going to have fun. We're going to have some great discussions. I do want to have a quick shout out to Linda, who probably never gets the recognition she deserves. She is our webinar queen, does an incredible job. This is our 15th year, as Linda said, of providing Webinar Wednesdays, and we were the first in industry to give out the CE certificates for these. We had over 5,000 people alone on these webinars, and been awarded over $4,500 in prizes just in 2024 alone. So thank you all out there in the TechNation community for supporting us. We are going to go ahead and get started. We thought it'd be a great idea to do something a little bit different, maybe not so technical, maybe provide some soft skills that could benefit all the people in the HTM industry out there. And so, first question is, why is proving you deserve a raise important? And to earn a raise, you may have to prove to your boss that you are worth the additional investment. Most employers understand the importance of maintaining a team that feels satisfied with their job and valued by their company. By taking steps to convince your manager that you are a valuable asset, you can ensure that they think of you the next time the chance for promotion or raise arises. So let's get started. Carol Davis-Smith, tell us, how important is it to take initiative, anticipate the needs of your team and boss, and be self-motivated?
So thanks first, John, for including me in this conversation. This whole idea of initiative is huge to me. As an individual contributor, I think it was me just being curious. So I think initiative and curiosity go hand in hand, if you will. And from the hiring manager perspective, to me, initiative is critical. For both of us, the hiring manager and the employee, initiative is what creates the environment, if you will, for opportunity. As an individual, I just explored things. I asked questions and I volunteered to do things that I didn't know anything about just because it looked interesting. What my hiring manager turned that into was an opportunity for the department to do things that maybe they weren't doing because I had shown some interest or my colleagues had shown interest. So I really think it's a two-way benefit. Everybody wins when we as individuals exercise our curiosity and demonstrate some initiative because I'm also one that's not willing to just sit there and wait for somebody else to define my future and what I get to do. I very much want to be in the driver's seat and at least have a voice in that conversation. So I think initiative is critical.
Any other panelists want to add to that? Great. We're going to move on. Another great question here. This is going to be for Nadia. What are ways you can make your boss's job easier?
That is a great question. A lot of times, and me as a biomedical engineer and as a chief when I was a biomedical engineering, it was really important to always be proactive. You're always trying to anticipate the next move. You're always trying to catch fires before it hits the leadership role, right? So that's a good way to help be proactive, kind of put out the fires before it kind of explodes into a million pieces, and then taking initiative, as Carol said, taking initiative, not waiting for it to be told, trying to identify things that you can do on your own. That's also a huge thing to make your boss easier, because if you're anticipating the moves, anticipating what you need to be done, that will help also relieve some of the stress. Communication is also a key, making sure everyone's in communication, making sure you're documenting everything that you're completing and making sure everyone's aware of what's being done. That's also a huge relief, especially if you take off leave, everyone is understanding about what you had completed and where you are with your tasks. And then just managing work efficiently, that's a big thing. So making sure that you're identifying tasks and being flexible, because especially when you're in a healthcare position, you're always knowing that there's going to be something coming on, something new that's going to take over the status, and make sure that the deadlines are met. So making sure that you're identifying, being flexible, and identifying your priorities, that will definitely help your boss to see what's going on.
That's fantastic. Even here at MD Publishing, whenever I have one of my team members come to me with an idea that's new and creative that I haven't thought of before, that's just that's really what makes them stand out, and that's so appreciative when you have some people just brainstorming and come up with ideas that you don't have to come up with on your own. Okay, moving on. For Douglas, how can biomeds keep learning?
Hey, hello everyone. Thought about that as I read all the questions. I think biomeds can keep learning. First of all, we have the obvious, you're going to read relevant material, but just taking myself for an example, I think that the specialized or the extra way that you can keep learning is through networking. For instance, your local biomed HTM organizations, you want to go where the people are who are the leaders in the field. And so what you're going there for is for mentorship. So networking events, MD Expo, things of that nature. You want to do a lot of networking. That's going to keep you learning, because you're going to be around the people who are the leaders. Also, following LinkedIn and stuff like that. So you want to search out for leaders that you can actually touch or mentorship, but also you can follow the right people, and that's going to keep you on the cutting edge of things that are going on. And so you'll be learning about, you'll understand what you need to be learning about, and that it can keep you up to date and keep you curious, and then that would also foster ideas for yourself. I think I follow all of you all because I'm learning.
That's interesting. What about shadowing your superiors or your managers? Is that something you guys have done in the past?
I'm doing it currently, but somebody raised their hand. Go ahead.
You go for it. You go first, Doug. Go for it.
But most definitely, I believe in. So I was mentored as a youngster. I know the power of it, and so even at my big age right now, I still believe that mentorship is very important. So I definitely try to shadow my superiors.
Right. And a lot of times you don't really understand, like Douglas says, you don't understand the different rules and how everyone's kind of addressing, especially in different rules in a hospital environment or healthcare environment, right? So I always emphasize for interns or engineers that are trying to know what they want to do, it's good to mentor and to shadow leaders so that you can see their day-to-day, understand what they're what they're focusing on as well, and then also it kind of gives you an idea about kind of what you want to do with your roles as a facility? Do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be an executive role, or do you want to move to a different field altogether? So it kind of helps you to understand and kind of get in a feel about what you want to do with your career.
Yeah, I would say yes, and all of that, and that kind of to the initiative pieces. Shadow anybody that's doing something different from you. I've had bosses that were very in tune with what other departments did, and they set an example that got me interested in spending time with supply chain and IT and facilities and finance and all these other areas. And I've had bosses that were completely disconnected from those groups, and so it really, because I had already spent time with them, I was very comfortable engaging with those other parts of the organization that drove greater value to my boss, and also maybe even more importantly, my boss's boss. So I would say shadow anybody that does anything different from you, and they don't have to be at a higher level in the organization. They may be lateral, they may be, I hate using the word lower, because I don't think anybody's lower than me. But anybody that's doing something different than you, I would encourage you to shadow.
I would just add, I think it's very important, if you work in a hospital environment or whatever type of organization or industry you're in, to get on committees, right? So you have an opportunity to sit in front of leaders, you can observe their behavior. One of the a common word that's going around, a term, is executive presence, right? So you can sit in these meetings, you can see how they articulate themselves, how they have common knowledge on the subject, and that they have the confidence to communicate effectively and just show that they have good leadership. So sit in and just be a sponge in the room, and that's a great opportunity too. And then also you can learn what else is going on around the organization, and then you can get involved in projects and volunteer, and that gives you visibility to leadership, right? So that'll be a great opportunity. And lastly, I'll just say, opportunity learners with biomeds. My number one resource is TechNation magazine. Every month I go through the magazine, I read articles from industry leaders. I'm a young leader myself, and I don't know everything. So, guys like Chris Novak, I see an article with him or just anyone else, right? And it's just an opportunity to learn more and keep up what's going on in the industry. If those for those who aren't doing that, I would take advantage of that opportunity.
I think not only shadowing like leaders and other departments, it's also being open and asking questions. So like back when I was a tech before I became a leader, like even when the vendors came on site, it was, hey, what are you doing? Can you show me? So then that way when like the next tech level came up, I had that knowledge and I became that SME. So it's not just leaders, but it's your coworkers, your vendors. So that way next time you're the person that they want to go to. So you kind of become that go-to person of, oh, well, she's the expert or you're the expert because you knew that. So it's outside your organization as well, because you're going to get just as much from them as within your organization, because they may be the SME, but like my goal was always, I want to be that SME next time. I don't want to have to call you to do the job.
Yeah, I think learning is also some mindset, because I guess the life is a lifetime learning. No matter where we are in life, we can always learn something new. I think that a lot of time, I agree with everyone said that we can learn from our mentors, our seniors, but we also require some humility too to learn from the youngsters too. They might have something to educate us as well in terms of technologies, right? The nuances that are going on with social media. I think that the key is the mindset and humility to continue learning no matter where we are in life.
That's really interesting. I remember, I'm kind of aging myself, but if you guys remember that incredible biomed manager, Frank Magnarelli, he was down at Miami Children's Hospital, and he was one of our really big speakers at ND Expo, and he would always talk about mentoring, but he'd always make his new hires follow the nursing staff around for a week, because you really need to be able to empathize and know what they go through, because you're going to be working with them closely, and you don't know until you walk in another person's shoes what they got going on. So yeah, it is very important to learn from all different types, and as I think Carol said, be curious, be a sponge, constantly be looking into ways to be able to grow that knowledge base. Okay, great question. This one's for Dewan. Dewan, what about what are the best paying fields that you think these days are to get into?
Well, obviously HTM is one of them. There's a lot of different avenues you can go down. Majority on the call already know that. You know, you have an opportunity to get in imaging. CEIT has been a big thing now. But I would say away from HTM, just I would say IT in general. For instance, at my organization, we have over 60 IT analyst positions open. All you need is a bachelor's degree with 1 year of relevant experience. Cybersecurity is another big one. You know, IoT, Internet of medical devices. You know, they're on the network, right? We need to be able to mitigate vulnerability and risk assessments to, you know, to the hospital organization. So I think that's another big one as well. So.
Speaking of cybersecurity and IoT and all of that, any particular avenues these techs or newbies or even veterans could go down to learn more about that, to be able to maybe get into that field?
I would say, and I'm speaking from my perspective, my organization, we integrate a lot with the IT department. Actually, I report up through the CIO. And so we work on a lot of projects together. Right now, for instance, we're doing an Epic integration with our devices. We're moving away from Cerner. And so there's a lot of projects going on, and my BMETs are getting involved with my CEIT folks, and they are working together on various projects. So that's how you get the initial experience. And then, you know, there's opportunities out there that you can maybe go back to school. I'm not sure if they do have a cybersecurity degree right now. I know there are certifications out there, so that may be a route you can take.
Oh, sorry, you, Carol, you go first.
I was just going to point out, very practical, with my interns at UConn, one of the assignments they get each semester is from LinkedIn Learning, and it's free. There are CompTIA prep sessions out there. They're about, I'll say about 30 hours a piece, and we start at the beginning with A+ to get the basics, and by the time they come out 4 semesters later, I think they've done 3 of those, and the idea is that they're prepped for, they could take the exam if they wanted to. I don't require it, but they could. But I think the piece that really makes them valuable is that the other part is that they're doing that shadowing thing we were just talking about at the same time. So they're working through the modules of the LinkedIn training while they're doing activities in the workplace that have to do with networking and cyber and whatnot. And that's, so any kind of coursework, whether it's LinkedIn or academic or whatnot, plus that doing the hands-on, I think is what really drives the power curve there.
Right. And we do require also for the VA, we require the interns or the engineers, new employees, we push for them to learn about at least the basics about cybersecurity, because IMT is the future, right? So most of the medical systems that you're going to be having today are going to be network cybersecurity, and you need to be able to understand when you're bringing in the hospital risks, the cybersecurity risks, know how to communicate that to IT as well. We have a cybersecurity program at the VA, so biomedical engineers actually do a lot of the work for that. So we push them to learn networking plus security plus training. We don't require them to take the test, but it is important for them to understand the basics. So like I said, they are able to communicate with everybody else and understand what they're bringing into the hospital and how the networking, is it going to go to cloud solution? You know, what are the risks on that?
Fantastic. Thomas, moving on, what are steps that they can, someone in the HTM field could take to show more value to their employer?
Yes, John. When it comes to value to the employer, right? So again, it starts with a mindset that I think we all need to understand that we are valuable, we are important. You know, we bring that confidence to work to the employer. First, knowing that we have the reason we're here because we are going to add value what the company is looking for, and ultimately in this profession, the healthcare and medical, it's a noble profession. What we do matters, right? We save lives. So that first and foremost, get out of the way that we are valuable, that you can come in with a lot of confidence, it can help a lot. And the second thing is, the second step is to how do we align what we do on a daily basis look align with the employer, the company's values, the organization. What is their objectives? How can we contribute to that on daily? For example, I work at USOC Medical, right, as a vendor. And what our value proposition for our customers is, we've got to be really good at quality, right? We got to be really good at price and turnaround time, right? So as the employee that I'm looking for when we do the hiring process, we want to look at the people who can align to that by exhibiting one of the three things. The first thing is knowledge and experience. We want people to be able to have that experience, right? The knowledge to do the work that's going to add value to our company, ultimately to our customers. Second thing is integrity. We want people to have high integrity, high character guys, right? We want to be transparent. I'm going to be transparent to them about what company's looking for, and they got to be transparent, and be trustworthy, going to contribute to our team's cause. And the last point is the attitude / availability. We want people with positive attitude, right? We want people to work hard and work smart, and most importantly, going to show up and help us deliver to our objectives, right? We could, like sports analogy, we could be the LeBron James of basketball, but then if he's not going to be able to play, he or she's not going to show up, then that's not going to help us, right? So with those things, the key principle, KIA, knowledge, integrity, of attitude, availability, right? So that's going to help us a lot. So if our technicians, our biomed, understanding they're valuable to contribute noble cause and bring that confidence to the employer, align them with the employer's objectives, I think it's going to work out very well.
Anyone else want to add to how your employees have shown value to your organization or your department? Go ahead, Dwan.
So I would just say, look for problems within your organization, and then take the initiative, if you have the bandwidth, right, to improve or come up with a solution, and then that gives you, again, visibility to not only your leadership, but potentially the executive leadership level folks, and then that's opportunities for promotion and things like that. So.
Great. This is for the whole panel. What kinds of continuing education seem to really show the most value and payoff?
I guess I could start. I feel like my MBA helped me, get the job over some other folks, other candidates. I think that it's really important, just depending on where you want to go in your career, develop your soft skills. I think those are one of the most important things. Especially even when you're, as a technician, you have to deal with customers, right? They don't speak the technical language that we do. So develop those soft skills and be able to articulate yourself so that they can understand it from a clinician's perspective. Like there are certificates out there, like you can go get like a project management. That's really big now. The other one is like there's a lot of universities offering online certificates for leadership and like change management. You can develop those leadership skills, and I think that'll take you pretty far. So.
Yes, Carol.
So a couple of things. First, I think Thomas said it earlier really well, which is lifelong learning. I think every type of education, it has value and can enhance your value to your employer of the moment, kind of thing. But I also think it enhances your life experience as well. But I think there's an element, there's a gajillion sources and resources out there, but without a sense of self-awareness. What do I want to be when I grow up this time? I've lost track of how many times I've grown up, and I've told people, oh, I'll never do that. And then something triggers and it looks interesting and I do it. Or I'll say, I'll never do that again. And 10 years later, there I am doing it, kind of, sort of again. But I think that self-awareness in the moment and recognizing that what's important to me when I started my career at 20-something and what was important when I got married and then when I got a family and now, and what I'm affectionately referring to as my third chapter, it's different, right? But having that self-awareness of what's important to me and what do I want to be when I grow up this time, I think is huge. Otherwise, you're just sort of floundering in a lot of resources, almost too many choices, and we find ourselves paralyzed. So.
I remember back when Manny Roman had DiTech, he would always have that incredible 2-3 days of education and vendor time. and he would teach at our MD expos all the time on body language and the communication skills. And as I've been in this industry for as long as I have, it seems like the techs who seem to evolve and get into that management leadership position, they seem to really grasp onto those soft skills, right? How to talk to leadership in the C-suite, how to present a report, how do we work an Excel file, how to just do some of those, those written skills, those communication skills. What kind of advice could you guys give out there to the attendees on some of those non-technical classes or education that they could learn from to help grow?
We do there. We try to push also for some leadership courses, or even like, I think that there's shoot, I forgot what they call it, but it's where they teach you how to talk elevator pitches. Especially because, like I said, even me, I learned myself when I was talking to the chief of staff, about a switch that went down. He was like, okay, just talk to me in layman's terms. I don't know what you're talking about. So learning how to talk like that, that helps when you're doing it in leadership roles, trying to explain something to someone from kindergarten age, So that's like at least the trainings that we had to teach for ours as well. Talk to anybody in the room, not even just the technical.
I would say within your own organization, they have talent management modules where you can develop soft skills too, and obviously it's do that for free. So that would be a good resource.
Yeah, I agree with that, Duan. And piggyback to your earlier points about having to develop the soft skills, so important. It's not just only for leaders. Really, all of us can really have that. One course I take 2 years back in a previous organization was the called crucial conversation training, right? To be able to relate, understanding where each other's come from, right? To create a safe space to carry that conversation, so we can create that trust, right? Teamwork, and at the end of the day, it's going to work out so much better for all of us, right? So that's the soft skill training that I took, and I thought helped me a lot, and to help, ultimately having that career advancement, having that soft skill is really the key. At the end of the day, we are working with human beings, right? Until AI or robots take over, but that's another, I don't know, 30 years from now, but we all work with human beings. So how are we going to effectively carry the conversation is going to be the soft skills is going to be really important.
Also, for your non-technical classes, this is for anybody out there. You want to pay attention to what's important at your job. I've been in my new position for about 2 months now, and I know how to use Excel, but my executive needs some things on a higher level than I was used to, as far as producing graphs and stuff like that. So even things of that nature, I have to go on Udemy, or however you pronounce that, the online class, and download a super course in Excel so I could brush up on my skills. So it's non-technical, but it's important to my job if I'm going to produce some reports that that they need. So paying attention to what's required.
Right. And then there's a lot of leadership courses too that can teach you how to talk also to your peers, and also anybody that's below you, right, that you can work with, because a lot of times it's sensitivity, trying to understand their issues, their understanding, try to help how to train in a different way. That was something I had to learn too, it's like how to, because sometimes I talk fast, so trying to explain things and make it in a different way.
One of the required readings here at our company is the old classic Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it is a classic case of just people like doing business with people they like, and people like working with people they like. And it's just a how to have a conversation, how to ask them questions, how to become likable. And it's just a really simple read, and I make all of our team members read it because it's just a really great human nature, how to get along with people book, and becoming more likable. So strongly recommend Carnegie, How to Win Friends, Influence People. Okay, we're gonna get down to some details now. Carol, I got one for you here. What are the best times to ask for a promotion or a raise?
So this, I think I go back to sort of the self-awareness, but also organizational awareness. If your organization is riffing or laying off folks elsewhere. If you're hearing about crunched budgets, not meeting numbers, whatever, I mean, I think you need to be aware of what the bigger picture at your organization, so you don't get literally or figuratively laughed out of a room, or worse, because of a lack of awareness, your boss may see you as being self-absorbed and not part of the team. So I think definitely being aware of that. I think, you know, we kind of often diminish the value that we bring. So when we finish a big project, having that conversation with how to, you know, with your boss about what went well, what would you have liked to have seen different, and whatnot, so that you're demonstrating, and maybe being able to weave in, hey, I really want to get this feedback because I really want to grow with this organization. I'd like to reach to the next level, or I'd like to develop the skills that would allow me to move sort of laterally or diagonally to this other team and get deeper into that. I think you weave that. Probably the last thing a boss wants to hear is, when am I getting a raise? There's a time and a place for being direct. That may not be it. I had a young man years and years and years ago, had a very good performance review. We were talking about the things that he could take on and build. He, as the manager, and anyone who is a manager understands that there are constraints on how many actual dollars we can allocate to folks. Even if I'd like to give them 10 times that, it doesn't matter. You know, I have constraints that I have to work within. And his response to me was, well, this money isn't enough for me to live the lifestyle I want to become accustomed to. And in fairness, it was all I could do not to laugh out loud. And I think my response, and attempting to be kind and sort of light in the moment, I said, I totally understand. I have the same problem. And so, you know, you really do have to sort of think about, you know, all those communication things that Nadia and Thomas and Dwan and everybody just mentioned. You really, when is important, but how you have that conversation and wrapping it into what's in it for them. If I get a raise, what are you getting out of it other than more of your budget being consumed, right? So I think, you know, having that bigger perspective is important, and also understanding what's important to you, because sometimes pay takes on a lot of different things. Maybe it's not dollars per hour, or, you know, maybe it's you'd like to have more vacation time. Maybe you'd like to have more flexibility of work. You want to be able to work, you know, 1 day at home or 2 days, whatever your, you know, depending on what your work is. Maybe that pay isn't actually dollars. It may be something else that you're trying to obtain, but still wrapping it in that sort of what's in it for them as well as you conversation.
Yes, go on.
Yeah, I echo everything Carol was saying. I would also say, probably the best time to set yourself up for success. You know, obviously, you're reading the room correctly. You know, self-awareness, organizational awareness are all important. But you know, during your annual review, right? I would say, voluntarily assume additional responsibilities, and then that can be used as leverage for a promotion opportunity or a raise. For instance, attending service training. There are potential ROI or cost savings that you over the year annually that you provided. You know, you can use that as an opportunity, right? There's also internal equity within organizations where that has to be considered as well. So, you know, you can't necessarily leapfrog or, you know, be awarded or promoted to a higher pay when you have someone else in that same, you know, like pay grade or whatever. So, you know, all organizations are different, but it's a very similar concept. So I would say just take that in consideration. But the biggest thing is just taking initiative to do more. And then once your boss see that you are providing that value, then, you know, they may even come to you before you have that opportunity to speak on your own behalf, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, Letitia.
Yeah, so not just raises, but like promotions. Talk to your leaders early. You know, whether you're doing monthly rounding or quarterly rounding with your leaders, So, you know, not every promotion, just because you're doing an amazing job, it may be dependent on positions, but talk to those leaders early to find out what you can do as an employee to be ready for that next position. So that way, when a position does open, you know, you're going to be that first person they look at versus an outside candidate or somebody else. So have those conversations so you can kind of set yourself up and be like, okay, I've done ABC, so then now I'm ready for that promotion. Where if you wait until a job position posted, you may not meet those requirements, and then you have to have that conversation. I'm like, well, yeah, you're great, and I love working with you, but sorry. And so, you know, have those conversations early when you're already maybe meeting with your leader to talk about your performance or whatever on that kind of routine basis, not just waiting until your annual review or when a position opens up.
That is a great point. Anyone else want to add to that? Because the next question kind of dovetails into that question. It's how important is it to set goals and know that your superior knows of those goals?
I think it's super important. Like our organization, we have to have goals, and it kind of plays into like our reviews and our review scores and things like that. But really aligning your goals is going to help set you up for the next level. Kind of like goals that I've had in the past. Like I knew I wanted to be in a leadership role one day. So like I geared my goals to whether it was classes I was taking that would get me to that next step, or around like my master's degree, my project management certificate. And then I aligned the second part of my goal to be able to kind of play on that project management to really enforce those skills. But setting your goals that will help get you to where you need to be, whether it's shadowing or learning from a coworker or taking these classes, it helps keep you getting done what you need to do. And you want to do it because it's going to affect your overall review, but at the same time, it's getting you ready for that next level. And then, you know, have those conversations with your leaders, because some of those goals you may need your leaders buy-in support to do that. And having that support is going to help get you ready.
Yeah, so I would say it's very important to your career progression. I always say setting SMART goals, so specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. To review setting goals to review them on a monthly basis or quarterly. The one thing I do with my staff, it depends on how big your team is. I have a team of about 50 employees, FTEs, and so I monitor their goals and their progress and provide feedback to them on a quarterly basis. So I set up quarterly one-on-ones. We obviously talk about personal things in a professional way, obviously, but we talk about their goals. Like if you want to get exposed to more equipment, how can I help you as a leader, get you to that next level for your career progression. It's worked for me for 6 years. My former leader, he told me that worked for him, so I think that's something everyone should consider, and it just keeps tabs, and you can track people's goals, and it keeps a good rapport with the team. So,
yes, Carol.
Taking a point from Letitia, taking the classes and getting the training, my bet is that you also demonstrated those skills and you demonstrated leadership in your current role. And I think that I've joked with employees and colleagues for years who come and say, oh, I did this, and then they ask for more, and I'm in the middle of all of this, and I say, well, it's your own fault. And they're like, why? I'm like, because you demonstrated competency, right? Whether that's leadership competency or a skill competency or whatnot. And on top of that, I would say one thing I'll leave you, anybody that's known me for any period of time knows I have a saying, which is leadership is not a synonym for management. There are loads of managers who are unfortunately not leaders. And there are loads of individual contributors that are some of the best leaders I've ever met. So there's always an opportunity to demonstrate those capabilities and those abilities and those skills. And I would encourage everyone out there to not wait until you're a manager, because you can be a leader right this moment.
Great point. Next question here. Is it important to get endorsements from others, even outside your department, to increase your value?
Okay. Absolutely. I think that especially like when you're going out and you're communicating and you're building these relationships with others, I think that does help when you're trying to get these leadership roles, because the more you're seen, right? And the more that you're seen as a help to other departments or organizations, the more it will help benefit. For example, I was the chief of biomedical engineering and I was trying to get the chief of engineering, right? I was able to communicate with others throughout the entire VA in terms of the maintenance department, the engineering department, the biomedical engineering department. I was able to communicate with everybody, so everyone was able to vouch for me when I was trying to get that final role as an engineering. And leadership sees that too, because if you know you're able to communicate with others, they see that as a good thing for when you're going in leadership. And I think that's extremely important. That also shows that you're able to build relationships really well.
Yeah, I would add to that some organizations have a formal 360 review process. Unfortunately, that's often at maybe mid or executive levels. I think it would benefit at every level in an organization to get feedback from the other people that we collaborate with, the people that we serve, because as a hiring manager, it does everything that Nadia just said. It gives me that visibility. And as someone looking for a job, it gives me a team, right? It gives me a posse, a crew, people that will vouch for me. Or before it comes time for that promotion or a raise or whatever, they're also the ones that become, some people use it as a personal board of directors, right? Like these are the people that will be really honest with me and say, here's what's where you can work, or here's something that I observed. Like I have a very good friend, we just spent some time together, and we always chuckle because she says, boy, you know, the one thing, Carol, is you, like no matter you're the consummate professional and all this, but it's all right there, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, and it's exactly why I never play poker, right? I don't have a poker face, I know that, and so I have to be aware when I'm in a meeting, especially a tense one, a difficult one, right? But that's because I have sort of my board of directors that gives me that feedback all the time, and not just, you know, the formal check-ins with the boss kind of thing.
Dewan, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say I think one of the biggest things when we're networking and getting endorsements and increasing our value is what was I going to say, especially within HTM, is that we're like 2 degrees of separation from each other. You know, somebody knows somebody. You know, I actually had a applicant from Las Vegas a week ago. I got a buddy who's down there and he works at a hospital. I don't know the guy. I reached out to him. Turns out he's a good guy. So, you know, our industry is, you know, such a niche industry, and we're again one phone call away from knowing anything and everything about someone. So I think that's very important when you trying to create these genuine connections and networking, right? Just make sure that you don't burn any bridges, and that, you know, your name, you know, a lot of value associated with that. So.
Those are great points. You know, your reputation is gold, right? And that's in anyone you come in contact with, whether it's your own department, anyone in the hospital, outside the industry, you're just always building your personal brand up, and that credibility goes a long way. I think I've heard from Linda that we've got a few questions. Is that true, Linda?
Yes, it is. We've got quite a few that come in. The first one is, how can I make sure I'm hiring or assigning the right technicians or engineers for the right job? Who wants to answer that?
All at once.
Oh, I'll jump at it. I'll jump at it, John. It's been a while since I've hired, but one of the last techniques that one of the techniques I used actually early in my career and then much later in my career was group interviews, because I think that there's a lot of black and white when it comes to the technical skills that we need as technicians and engineers, and sort of like you either know Ohm's law or you don't, right? But where we often run into trouble, like when we say the right person, is are they going to be a good fit on our team dynamics and culture and philosophies and whatnot? And so I've used group interviews. Now you have to be careful with who you have from your team do this, because you don't want it to turn into a group interrogation. You really want it to be a dialogue and a back and forth. I had great results with that, and I also experienced what were you guys thinking? Like, this person's terrified now, right? So you do, as a leader, have to learn and grow and adapt it. But I've found those sort of group interviews to be extremely helpful.
And to echo Carol, I agree, group is excellent because then you get different feedback from different people. It's sometimes hard, but I also noticed what I do is depending on the type of position. So for example, if it's an imaging position, right, then you want to put some information, some questions that are related to imaging so you can get a little bit more technical. A lot of people interview very well, but when it comes to the technical, that's where it falls from. So that's when I try to add a few more technical guides, not just the PBI questions, right, that kind of get the IT questions as well. Then that kind of gets you a feel of not only how they think, but do they know the knowledge about that, because the resume could say something different than how they answer the question. So that's another thing that I do to kind of understand if I'm interviewing the right people, and hiring the right people.
I agree with everything Nadia said. That's a great advice. One thing for me is always ask for behavioral questions to see how, in the end, we're looking for the right fit. And knowledge and technical skills is one thing, but also one of the people who has the right soft skills and that will fit with the team. So ask behavioral questions. In this situation, what did you do to handle that? And what was the outcome? I'm looking for the STAR format, like the situation, the task, the action, the result. So make sure to give me a very, very good answer. And then that will help me understand, get the right best employee candidate. But ultimately, what I'm looking for from, for the company I'm working at USOC is that I always look for intrinsic motivated people. Yeah, ask questions to see what drives them, right? That's going to be the key. That a lot of people have really good skills and knowledge, but they are passive. They don't want to. To Carol's early point, right? They don't take initiatives, right? So that just diminish half of the value that we're looking for. So that the intrinsic motivation is somebody motivated. They may not have the skill, but we can teach them because they're motivated to learn, to contribute, right? So that's can perhaps to help ask those questions, behavioral, and get something out of them, and then hopefully that you can find that right fit for your organization.
Okay, this
I'll also add, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
And I'll also add, and that, of course, you're getting all these answers. All of them are correct. But personally, when I'm interviewing, I have, say, 7 different biomed shops, and each one of them has its own little dynamic and culture. So in the interviewing process, along with everything that everyone has said, I do try to gauge the personality to make sure that I'm matching. Just certain personalities doesn't work in every shop, and so you're also paying attention very closely to that dynamic also. So it's a bunch of moving parts, but that's another piece.
Okay, so kind of leading on from that, will earning a certification like CBET or CRESS automatically get me a raise?
I think that depends on the organization. Some organizations, if you get a certification, you'll get a pay increase. Some don't. But I mean, look at that organization, because some organizations may require that for a potential promotion, as well as if you're interviewing 2 candidates that maybe have the exact same education, same experience. Well, if you have somebody that has a certification, that may be the person that's looked at a little bit favorable because they've gone in and taken that extra initiative. But it really kind of depends on the organization and like what the position is and kind of what you're looking for or what that employer is looking for.
So I'll say in my organization that I'm trying to make some changes, I've only been here like 3 months. So I'm with you, Doug, as newbies. But in order to move up to a level 3, you have to be CBET certified. So essentially you are getting a raise. But I think it's also more of a hindrance to the organization because we aren't able to attract outside candidates. So, but I do feel like, obviously it's important to get your CBET or any certification that shows that how serious you are about your profession. But again, not all organizations value the certification same. So.
Yeah. And I also say that, and because I've had texts before say, if I get this, will it be automatic? So it's not automatic, but you're increasing your value. and so it might be automatic down the line. So you still want to pursue the extra education and go for your CBET, even if it doesn't lead to an automatic promotion or pay raise at your current organization. You still want to improve yourself because it will pay off later.
Perfect. Okay, another question that's popped up is, from an HTM manager's perspective, what are the best tools or methodologies for measuring employee productivity, as well as to have better fair workload distribution among employees of different experience levels?
I'm just going to say up front, none of the metrics work if you don't have good data to start with. So if you don't have a culture of documentation, it really doesn't matter. You're never going to get productivity numbers that make any sense or are valid or, you know, supportable or any of that. So I'll let the others who are more in the role, but I would say if you don't have a baseline of good data, all bets are off.
Right. It is like Carol said, it's really important to push for that documentation of data. We do put that as an emphasis in our organization, just because then you can kind of gauge how much the workload is and the distribution of that, especially for the technicians. Work orders are really important, you know, especially for how long it's taking to do a work order, you know, what's being open. But also from an engineer perspective, it kind of helps to see, are they in meetings all the time? You know, how much project management are they doing? So doing that is a good key. That's probably the best metric for identifying that, just having them document it in a work order system, at least for ours. That way you can do more analytics and Power BI, you know, tools if you want to do whatever you need to do to kind of evaluate that.
Okay, great. We've actually got an AI question here. Is how deep do you think the AI is involved in the HTM business? And what are the best ways to make us be prepared for such integration and be more involved in such an important business field?
Data, data, data. I heard an interesting quote just in the last few days. Remember that there's an A in AI, it's artificial, right? It's not real. The people on this call, all the attendees, that's the intelligence. And AI is only as smart as the data on which it was trained. And if we as a community have terrible data, then AI is going to help us do bad things even faster than we do today. So data, data, data.
But also you need to prepare. AI is going to be the future. I know that, even though it kind of scares me for myself. But it comes back to understanding how AI works, and when you're bringing a product in, you know, knowing the risk, the cybersecurity risk, you know, because knowing what you're bringing in, you want to know, is it cloud-based solution? Who has access to that data? Is that data going to be in the cloud forever? You know, so those are the things that you need to identify before you can decide to bring in AI into your hospital or environment. It's going to be important. I see that for the future because that's how healthcare managers are able to anticipate risks with surgeries, you know, kind of identify that. But it is going to be integrating with the PHI, right? So that's when you have to halt yourself and understand, you know, what AI products are there and really understand that before you even try to bring it into your hospital or healthcare environment.
Yeah, and if we're talking about bringing in medical devices, I was originally thinking in terms of HTM data, you know, our maintenance, which I think there's huge potential for if we get a culture of data across the board. But if we're talking about medical devices and bringing them in, I think all of us either need to have someone on our team or develop someone on our team who knows how to do true technology assessment. I'm going to date myself now, John, and say back when I started and we were implementing arrhythmia monitoring, which everybody takes for granted now. Back in the day, one of the evaluation pieces that I was responsible for as a clinical engineer was what was used to train this essentially AI machine learning, although primitive compared to today's standards. There were, and I apologize now, I forget, there were 2 tapes, literally tapes, guys, this is the old world, that these algorithms were trained on. And if your system did not use those, we did not let you in. I did that in collaboration with my clinical partners and mentors. I tell people I was raised by nurses in the OR and the ICU, and this is a great example. I think that's an even bigger, harder job today because, again, if you're reading the news, if you're keeping up to speed, you can see that we have all sorts of clinical evidence that is enormously biased because it does not include various and sundry groups for one reason or another, or just the way data is gathered by clinicians in the delivery of care. They exclude people so that data doesn't get captured. They exclude it for good reasons, but if that data is not there, then it means the machine wasn't trained to exclude those types, right? Those situations. So I think this is a level of engineering and clinical capability that we are going to have and or develop. If you don't already have it, you're going to have to develop it in your departments to add value to organizations. Otherwise, somebody else will, probably our buddies in IT, or your organization is going to suffer the ramifications of having AI systems that wreak more havoc than they deliver good care. And besides, it's really fun work. So go out, spend the time, learn.
Great. Well, we've got time for one more question, and it is there anything you would recommend that we consider unlearning?
Bad habits.
I would say every time I realize I have a bias, understanding why I have that, and how do I unlearn that, right? How do I make myself more open to other perspectives, other perceptions, other whatnot? I think learning from that, I think, has been the most powerful thing I've had in the last decade of my development.
I would think that fine line, but gray area. I think we would do well by unlearning the parameters we put on biomed because of the IT portion of it. I see a lot of finger pointing sometimes, and this is our job. Well, it's kind of expanding, so we need to unlearn just saying this medical device itself is our responsibility because it's expanded. So we got to kind of unlearn that piece of it. If y'all understand what I'm trying to say. Okay.
Right. Don't silo yourself out, right? Because we're all a team. Everyone's trying to complete a task, right? So, like Carol and Douglas said, yeah, don't try to, it's not just yours or theirs, you know, it's the team effort. Sometimes a lot of the stuff is going to be gray area integration. Everything's integrated now, right?
Yeah.
So, trying to unlearn that this is my position and I don't have to worry about anything else that's not going to help anymore, at least for me.
Okay, great. Do you want to add anything, John, or any thoughts, tips before we wrap up?
Well, can't thank everyone for joining, the panelists. Excellent job as predicted. Anything else you guys want to add before we sign off? Well, excellent discussion. We're going to be doing more of these series throughout the year, so please tune in. Again, thank you out there, TechNation, for attending today. Thank you, Linda, and thank you, esteemed panelists. You guys were fantastic. Thank you again.
Yep.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for a really great discussion and obviously for your time today. If attendees, if you have any further questions for the panel, please email us at webinar@mdpublishing.com and I will forward them for you. Now, just a quick reminder, you can attain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Now, if you've missed any of our past webinars, please visit webinarwednesday.live to view our whole webinar archive. We'll be back next week with another webinar. So again, visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and, of course, complimentary registration. So thank you all once again for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.